Okay, so there's this TikTok musician, right? He had that huge viral hit, Romantic Homicide. Well, now he's at the center of a real-life murder trial, and today we're going to break down some really grim new details that have just been made public in this crazy case. So, for more than a year, everyone's been wondering what happened to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Her disappearance was just a total mystery, but now a judge has unsealed the official autopsy report. And wow, it's filled with some really disturbing new details that could honestly change everything about this case. So let's dive into what we now know.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll get into those chilling findings from the autopsy. Then we need to talk about the two main people involved, the victim and the accused. After that, we'll walk through the timeline to see how we got to this point. And finally, we'll look at how the legal battle is shaping up for the trial. First up, that medical examiner's report. So what exactly is in this thing? For months, investigators kept all the details about Celeste's death completely secret. And for good reason. They didn't want to compromise the case. But this week, a judge ordered it released, and it basically blew the doors wide open.
So the official word is out. The LA medical examiner's findings are public. And honestly, the details are even more disturbing than a lot of people were bracing for. It absolutely confirms just how violent her death was.
And here it is, straight from the report. It says she died from multiple penetrating injuries from objects. That's such cold clinical language. But what it does is it officially confirms what prosecutors have been saying from the beginning, that this was an incredibly violent and brutal crime.
Okay, let's break down what else the autopsy found. The report gets specific. 2 penetrating wounds to the torso, and it mentions possible sharp force injuries. It also confirms the dismemberment of the upper and lower extremities. But, and this is a huge but for the legal case, the time of death is listed as unknown. Why? Because the body's condition limited what the autopsy could determine. You can bet that one unknown detail is going to be a massive point of argument in court. All right, so who are the people at the very center of this tragedy? You've got a rising music star on one side, and on the other, a young girl whose life was just cut way too short. Let's take a look at how their worlds collided.
So the accused is David Burke, but you probably know him as D4vd. This guy was a massive TikTok sensation. He had that viral hit Romantic Homicide, which led to a big record deal with Interscope, and he even performed at Coachella. Just a skyrocketing career. And then you have the victim, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was only 14 years old. She disappeared back in April of 2025, and the last place anyone says they saw her was going to D4vd's home in the Hollywood Hills. So you have to wonder, how did this go from a missing person case all the way to a first-degree murder charge? Well, let's connect the dots. The timeline of what's happened over the last year or so really lays it all out.
So, it all kicked off in April 2025. That's when Celeste first went missing. And for 5 months, just nothing. No answers, no leads. Then, in September, a really shocking discovery is made. Her dismembered body is found in the trunk of a Tesla registered to D4vd. From there, things really started moving this month. On April 20th, D4vd David Burke was arraigned and pleaded not guilty. And then, literally just 2 days later, the judge made that autopsy report public.
Okay, so with a trial on the horizon, we're starting to see 2 completely different stories emerge. This is what the whole legal fight is going to be about.
The prosecution is not messing around here. They've hit David Burke with first-degree murder. Now, what that means is they believe this wasn't just a spontaneous act. They think it was premeditated, planned out. It's the most serious charge you can get. And his response in court? A very clear not guilty.
But then you have the defense. His attorney, Blair Burke, came out swinging. She said, and I'm quoting here, "We believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death." Now pay close attention to that wording. It's really specific. She's not just saying he didn't murder her, she's saying he wasn't even the cause of her death. That's a huge difference, and it sets up a major clash with what the prosecution is claiming. So here's where we're at. The autopsy answers the horrifying question of how Celeste died, but it leaves the biggest question of all wide open. Who is responsible? You can see the stage being set, right? The prosecution is going to use these grim details to paint a picture of a calculated, cold-blooded murder. The defense, on the other hand, is going to argue that the evidence just doesn't connect their client to the crime at all. In the end, it's all going to come down to a jury to sift through everything and decide which of these 2 stories the evidence actually supports.